Your career in product is like navigating a maze. Every turn presents new opportunities, but also challenges. And the key is to stay persistent, keep exploring, and learn from each step. And in this episode, you're going to discover the right path to follow for product career success. Now, Mark Anderson, who's a group head of digital product at John Lewis, is going to be sharing his strategies and insights to transform your approach to product management and drive success in your team and career in this episode of Product Team Success, brought to you by our friends at Amplitude. Now, Mark is going to be highlighting the path and skills that you need the most. And coming up in this episode, the role of product in organizations, understanding the market and strategic direction, rapidly changing priorities, advancing your career in product, and the little and often concept. Now, Mark, with your 17 years of experience in product management, I'm eager to hear about the essential skill sets needed for success. But first, could you share your thoughts on the role of product in organizations?
The journey of product, and I don't think much has changed in the get stuff done world at all. I think there's still a very big focus on the get stuff done. But I think there's and we're still, and rightly so, using lots of the same principles around MVPs and test and learn, which has come out of the agile world, and trying to apply that into a product world is interesting. What I've seen working in different companies, and I'd say there's kind of two sides to this for me. One is the way the company does product from a technical and sort of operational level, to the way the company does product from a business level or a commercial level. And I think sometimes the two can be diametrically opposite. So, for instance, if you're doing some quite big, hairy changes in the products you want to bring to market, so maybe you're bringing something very new to market, but the cost of entry is quite high in terms of capability, then it's very difficult to be agile in that classic way and have MVPs and test and learn. You sometimes have to make big bets and go, okay, we're gonna go with this. It's going to cost us quite a high hurdle to get in, and we have to believe in it, and we have to therefore drive it forward. The other side of it is those small iterative changes. So when you have maybe more of an established product, maybe your classic B2C, your classic user interface, how can we keep making that a good experience for the customer? I think that's interesting. So your classic front end website is an example of that. How can we iterate that, make it better, make it low friction? That's a really good example of classic iterative product. But when you're looking at something like maybe a big supply chain change or something in some of the more intricate areas like payments or financial services, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to be quite so test and learn about it. And so the applying some of those iterative agile test and learn principles of product aren't as clear. And I think that's where it's so important that product managers have that commercial view. They have that commercial aspect. They understand what they're trying to achieve. They understand the domain and the market that they're in. Because if they sort of merrily go along one particular route and it's a bit of a commercial dead end, you could sink an awful lot of money and time and effort into something that's not going to work out. So really, especially in those areas where there are the bigger, gnarlier problems, or maybe you're making some sort of foundational builds to start off, stepping back, having a really clear strategic direction and understanding where you are in that market, what gap you're trying to plug, what opportunity you're trying to solve or get the opportunity from. It kind of comes back to what's the problem you're trying to solve. But that's sometimes can be at a grander strategic level. And it's really, really important product people understand that and understand where they're going with that. I think there's a tendency in some organizations for product to be a delivery function, and it's definitely not that, because some of the delivery elements can be so um, connected to where you're trying to go.
So, Mark, what else besides delivery do organizations potentially get wrong then?
Well, it's interesting. I'd love to see more SLTs be essentially, product leaders. At the end of the day, I think leadership is such a core part of the product profession. I'd even say product is a leadership profession. Um, there's always a matrix. There's always a series of stakeholders and people to work with to achieve an outcome. The senior leadership teams and leaders in the organization, they're trying to achieve the same, and let's put it in a commercial context, commercial outcomes that everyone else is. It just might be that product is usually structured around some more specific domains, but the product person will still be a mini CEO of sorts. They'll still be trying to go after some really clear benefits to the organization, however they're measuring those. And they'll be the benefits that the senior leadership team want to see as well. And the CPOs on execs and boards, they'll be a really crucial voice in that room around connecting things like trade outcomes or sales outcomes with technology outcomes, because product does provide that glue between a lot of these different domains and stakeholders. One of the and as a result, they kind of need to provide that leadership in the conversation as well. And it takes lots of different ways of manifesting itself. Sometimes it can be outright commercial leadership, and let's go after this opportunity, let's go in this direction, let's do it this way. Other times it can be a huge internal negotiation discussion. What's the best trade-off between some of the tech investment and some of the trading opportunities, for instance. But to be in those conversations, you need to have a whole range of skills, leadership skills, to help lead and facilitate those conversations. But I'd like to see lots of leaders in organizations demonstrate those skills as well. And I think many do. But I see those as fundamental product skills. And it's great when you do see that happening within product teams, kind of within their domain or within their sort of position in the hierarchy, because they're demonstrating exactly the same sort of skills and capabilities you'd demonstrate in any sort of exec board meeting. Kind of mastery of your domain, understanding of the commercial opportunities, trading off with costs and capabilities, and sort of navigating your way through to the optimal outcome. And they're exactly the sort of skills that the product brings to the table.
I completely agree. Let's dive deeper into the role of product teams. Could you share your thoughts, advice, and experiences on how, let's say, prioritization and strategic decision-making processes work within an organization?
I mean, for me, I think this does come back to the way product is set up within an organization. I think a lot of teams are doing product without realizing they're doing product. So I've seen some organizations have product at the very forefront of their business to say, what's the strategic direction we should be going in and what needs to be true to get there. I've also seen organizations where product is very much third, fourth, fifth down the line in terms of areas of the organization to get involved in a conversation, and as a result, you get solutionizing before products even got involved. So products are kind of given a "we want this," and it's a 1-2 liner sort of requirement. And as a result, it creates a lot of questions, a lot of, but do you want this version or that version, or how do you want to go about it? What are you actually trying to achieve? And I think there's a huge opportunity within product, and I think this is something product as a world in general. And you touched on it earlier. We'd love to do more of it, but the opportunities to do more of it are quite few and far between. But that is education. That is saying, if product is involved from the outset, then you can get much better outcomes because you cut through the noise a lot quicker to understand the art of the possible. And lots of organisations kind of fall back on the forcing functions strategy. That might work in the very short term, but I don't think it's a sustainable way of going about things, because you do potentially create a lot of tech debt, you create a lot of organizational angst. I think you have well-positioned product early on in the process with really good relationships with the some of the front-end drivers, should we call it, and that could be sort of in an e-commerce context. What do they need? What do they think's going to drive more trade? What do you think is going to drive more customer satisfaction? It might be in a B2B context. If we have to build something, what can we sell into that market? And to have much more of a close relationship and much more sort of early stage involvement is super important. I'd even say that for then translates to the skills product people have to have, which is having a really good understanding of their internal customers, should we call it that, priorities. What is it they're trying to achieve? What do they want to get out of it? So you wouldn't necessarily expect a product person to do online trade or to do sales into B2B, but you certainly expect them to overlap into those worlds. Absolutely. So, we all know about sort of pre-sales functions, for instance, and that is a product that very much part of the product world. I think, they are on the front line with a salesperson, for instance, doing a lot of that understanding of what it is it actually that the customer's after. And I've seen some absolutely brilliant pre-sales people who are, they are one cold call away from being a salesperson because they're so good at what they do, but they do understand their domain and they understand their product and they understand the technology. As a result, they come in front of the client with a huge amount of trust because they do really genuinely know what they're talking about. And I think that's something in a B2B context that product provides. In a B2C context, to a similar extent, you've got product people who are domain experts who really know what they're talking about, and they can really help cut through some of that prioritization. So when you have stakeholders who are interested in something they've seen or spoken to someone about, they can really help rationalize that. And it might be it's an excellent thing to go after, but how can we present those options and how can we have those discussions in the sense that the prioritization is for the right reasons? Can we help with some of that insight and understanding? Because whilst it'd be great if everyone's a domain expert, they're not, and it's just trying to get that dovetailing. Payments is a classic world, very, very complicated, highly nuanced. Trying to get some cut through in terms of the prioritization is, I think, where product people can really bring value, because it says, right, we can articulate where we want to go, and then we can articulate how to get there. And incidentally, I think that articulation is a really core product skill. How do you articulate complex things to people who aren't necessarily domain experts, but who do also have a clear idea of where they want to go? And it's not a sort of but it's not a sort of give and take conversation in the sense of you get told and you say, look, here's the options. It should very much be a peers conversation rather than a parent-child conversation. So it's not like some sort of senior leaders should say, I want to go and do this, make it happen. It should be much more, what are we trying to achieve in the round as a strategy? What's the best way to do it? Okay, here's where we get to. So I think if to have those prioritization conversations, it's not a sort of grooming the backlog. It's not a sort of effort versus reward type of conversation. It's really being there at the inception to understand what's the best way to achieve the strategic outcomes that's going to benefit the organization we're all in.
That is awesome. Now, what advice and skills would you recommend for developing a successful product career?
I think it's very hard. for many people, and understandably, if product is a technical profession, that's not, there's, I mean, or it is a profession where you are brought in as a specialist of some sort. Now, it doesn't have to be technical. You can have product in non-technical areas, but essentially you're someone who understands something at a depth of detail to change your mindset into something that is much more ephemeral, like how do you interact with people. That I think it is difficult for many people to, especially in the far more deeply technical domains, to kind of weigh those two things up, because you're having to have conversations and think on your feet in sort of probably some quite high intensity situations with senior leadership, where you're having to trade off very transactional statements and land those things with people who won't hear what you're saying, and it's I think a really difficult thing to do. And my one piece of advice on it is keep doing it, keep trying to do it, keep practicing at doing it, and you'll forget why you didn't like doing it in the first place, because you'll do it so much. And it's just one of those things that does have to be practiced. And the best way to do that is in the experience you have on a day-to-day basis as a product leader. I'd even go so far as to say carve out time to do it. So I know in my personal development conversations with my teams, everyone's got different personal development goals, but those that where we do talk about that sort of influence around the organization, I say, don't wait for the opportunities to come to you. Go and create the opportunities to have some of those conversations with people, because, like you say, it might pay off when you least expect it. And especially if it's something you under index on, do more of that, because you need to get up to par. But I do think I think that's one of the key differentiators of product versus many other professions, is this need to straddle different domains or different skill sets in order to achieve value.
Mark, as a final question, could you share your thoughts on the mindset that one should adopt for a, let's say, successful career in product management?
I'm a huge believer in little and often. I think if you spend a little bit of time each week, like you say, on improving maybe a skill set that you feel you need to upweight, or you want to be excellent at a certain skill set, then I do think that in product in general, you can get very philosophical about things. And whilst I don't think it's getting down to the nitty gritty of DevOps, etc., I do think there are some foundational skills that you need to remember while you're there. What are the key metrics you're trying to turn? So if you're a product manager in a fairly well defined domain, shall we say, for the ease of the conversation, then you should know exactly what the metrics are that kind of define your domain, and define sort of success in your domain. And when it comes to accountability, I think you should give product managers, product leaders, accountability for those metrics, and that's also the ability to pull the levers. They can't have all the accountability, all the control, because especially in large matrix organizations, but they should absolutely be given an awful lot of accountability and responsibility to turn the dials and pull the levers that help them drive those metrics, which are the metrics the organization cares about, to achieve value. And I know that's from on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, that can sometimes get quite vanilla and quite sort of grey, but that is the fundamental. What are the guardrail metrics? What are the value driving metrics? If there's a metric going up in your area, as a metric going down in someone else's area, how do we bring those together? But how do you interact that with someone's personal development as well? No, I absolutely agree. I think clarity is something that's really key. And I do think lots of product, as well as kind of establishing a lot of that domain context. I've been into organizations where they've got almost no context for the domain, and you have to almost create the domain and the metrics and the understanding. in order to give that clarity. Because if you're a leader and people are looking to you for that clarity, then you have to help create that clarity. And sometimes that's through coaching as well with those individuals or all those teams, and the wider organization as well. Where do we want to have that accountability and responsibility? And that can get very political, but you certainly, in an ideal world, on a blank sheet of paper, want as much clarity as you can get, because that also helps you deal with challenge. If something goes wrong or isn't quite as you expected it, having everyone understanding exactly what map you were looking at and where the various potential minefields were is really useful. But if it's sort of all over the place and no one's got clear accountability and no one's got a clear sense of the direction they should be going in, it's then very hard to have that conversation, because you're sort of having to create the context every single time there's a challenge. But that does, so as much as you can, have those dashboards, have that data, have that insight, have that regularly shared and regularly discussed as well. So even if nothing's going wrong, discuss it, have those retros, even when nothing went wrong. So I think it's important, because I think communication, that internal communication, I've been in organizations where a project will go through, it'll get delivered, everyone will go, right, that's that done, and then you don't talk about it again for 2 years. And it's you absolutely have to sort of almost force yourself, coming back to the little and often, to do that. And whilst product's not I don't think products fundamentally is a delivery mechanism per se. You have to make sure delivery happens, but you do have these like hard skills, like you're talking about, these quasi program management skills. But that's not the be all and end all. But they do have to be there. So there is a foundation of this hard, sort of hardcore skill set, which you have to build on.
Now that you know how to navigate the maze of product management and product management careers, and you can find your way to success. So follow Mark Anderson on LinkedIn for more expert advice on product management career development. And for more product insights, don't miss our great conversation that we had with Matt Fenby Taylor on mastering storytelling to boost your product career. And from me, Ross Webb, and our friends at Amplitude, until next time, bye for now.